The beginning, the middle, and the end is all bull. We were like pretty much freaking out.
You just start over and pick it up again.
I feel like that was kind of like pivotal for me.
In my opinion, you only figure out how to do it by doing it.
We don't know, the election, like this could get crazy.
I kind of think that that's bullshit.
Ultimately, I just like don't feel like I need to be anybody's like yes woman at this point in my life. I really want to do like something for me. I was like, why are they calling me? Like I can't do this anymore. Oh God, I have so many thoughts on this. Wow.
How does one set out to sell their company for $200 million to Kraft? When you started doing this, was that even a seed in your head?
Yes, in the sense that when we launched, Mark was very transparent with me. Look, there's like no margin in the food industry, so you're lucky if you break even. Most companies that you see in the grocery store that are growing fast are like pretending they're crushing it, but really they're like burning massive amounts of money, probably running at sometimes negative gross margins, which means they're actually losing money on the unit economics of every item they sell. They're funded by like private equity funds. And I think it's kind of just like a private equity circle jerk, if you will. Like you saw it with the plant-based food movement, right? Like they all raised all this money and then all these marketing dollars flooded the market. And there was this big like consumer hype around plant-based food. And then they ran out of private equity money. And then the companies like don't have any sales now. So when we launched, we were very transparent. Mark said to me in 2015, when we launched the company, I like never let him live this down. If we could just sell this for 30 million one day, I would be happy. And then like a year later, he's like, if we could just sell this for 100, I'd be happy. And
well,
then
knowing Mark, that wouldn't have satisfied your lifestyle now, buddy.
No, that
And
wasn't
Mark,
enough.
If you're listening, that would we'd be going back to the poorhouse, buddy.
I know, Mark. No, he's good though. He's pretty, I remember talking to him early on and being like, so what if it all went away? And he's like, well, I would just like wake up, do the crossword puzzle, go get a coffee, like make love to my wife, and like I'd be fine. Like it would all. I think he has a good perspective on
He's the best.
I love people like that. It's like, what if instead of having anxiety about it all going away, you apply what you've learned to like the next day and you just start over and pick it up again.
Yeah.
So when he comes to you and says he has this idea, or do you go to him? What's the story?
So I will give you like the quick story. I mean, so I have an accounting degree. I grew up in Chicago eating like bagel bites and s'mores Pop-Tarts and all that. Had my own kind of like every story. Like you've seen that meme where it's like, oh, my kid like pooped blood and then I launched a snack, like every healthy food company. But I had like, Mark had IBS. There was some like health stuff there. I ran marketing for a brand. I lived in South America, got an accounting degree, quit my job, like to waitress. I just had this crazy like experience in my 20s. So I lived in South America for 2.5 years.
Where?
I was like everywhere, 315 hours on a bus from like Argentina to the southern tip of
Just
Ushuaia.
enjoying your
So
20s.
you were scrappy.
I was super scrappy. That was like my favorite word in business. Yeah. Just enjoying. I quit my accounting job and I was like, I'm moving to Argentina. And I was supposed to stay 6 months, met 3 girls from Ireland and traveled for like 2 years.
Sounds fun.
It was great. Yeah. And then I got my yoga certification in Hawaii. And then I came home and I was like, oh my God, all my friends have jobs. Like I have no idea what I'm doing with my life. You know, I'm so lost. Started seeing my dad's therapist and just kind of like figured it out. I ended up learning how to surf when I lived in South America. So I came back home. I had dated this guy who was like a lot younger than me when I was living in South America. He was from Santa Barbara. I'd never been to California. I surfed Lake Michigan in the winter. You have to surf like windswell with like a hood and like the whole wetsuit,
Kinda like a
booties,
cold
everything.
plunge.
Yeah, it is like a giant, like there was ice floating. It was a lot like a cold plunge, but I was protected. I was wearing a wetsuit, so I'm not as diehard as you guys are. But
Listen, I'm not surfing in ice.
yeah,
right?
I
I
guess
was
it's like
surfing ice.
2 minutes.
Oh, you're
Yeah.
not surfing in ice.
I
You know
might
what?
surf in ice.
I had icicles like hanging from my.
No, you're not doing that. You're not surfing in ice.
I like intense.
You're not surfing
Wait,
in warm water.
When
Okay,
you
go
say
on.
you went to your dad's therapist, why are you going to your dad's therapist? What was the reason?
Well-
Because you didn't feel like you had any.
No, I just came home and I was like, I don't belong anywhere. Like, what am I doing? I'm behind in life. You know, like the feelings you just have in your 20s. You think you're behind all your friends. Like, I don't know, just the normal feelings. My dad's like, listen, I had a midlife crisis or a quarter life crisis. Like, you got to go see David Roadhouse. So I started seeing this like really cool therapist who was like Stanford theology, like worked at Rush Hospital, helped like transition people to death, and then realized like Christianity wasn't really providing like the right medium to help with that and got super into Buddhism. So my dad was like downtown Chicago. I don't know how we're here, but my dad was downtown Chicago, like financial advisor, but waking up every morning, like meditating when I was growing up. And that was because of this guy, David. And David, he's like really old. He married my husband and I. He's probably like 80 now. He's great. So he started to be my therapist at that point in my life. And I feel like that was kind of like pivotal for me. Like,
Does he implement Buddhism in your routine through therapy?
I mean, not really, but like that would be maybe his like general approach. But he sees like, if you guys know who Richard Melvin is, he's one of the most successful like restaurateurs. He started Let Us Entertain You, which is like a huge it's a huge Chicago restaurant company. He has got some clients, like that guy is public, but he has some other like really successful clients in like the wine industry and whatnot. So I think he does well with like, he called me triple type A once, but I think he does well with like some
Triple type
A. Yeah. I was like, I feel like I'm so
I don't know
laid
that
back.
Michael's triple type A. I feel like you're double type A. Triple type A is not.
I'm like actually quite laid back. So I don't know like what he meant by that. A lot of energy and like a lot of like ambition.
So at what point does something crack with your career where I meet
Mark? So I moved to California because of this boyfriend. He was like in Santa Barbara. I come out.
The young guy.
The young guy, that I met in Mexico.
The really young guy. I'm just kidding.
Yeah, the totally really young guy that I met in Mexico was fun, while it lasted. And then came out to California and I was like, oh my God, I'm moving here, like done. So I moved 2 months later and I like reached out on LinkedIn to a sales. I love this brand Kavita. Do you guys remember Kavita? Yeah. So I reached out on LinkedIn to someone who worked there and I was like, do you guys have any job openings? And they were like, oh yeah, talk to like, we're actually hiring a marketing director. And I had like no business being the marketing director for Kavita. I had worked at an agency and managed the Frito-Lay account and they hired me. They were like sub 10 million in revenue, running the business out of a garage, crazy environment. And I stepped in and ran marketing for them for like all of 7 months. And then I met Mark because I knew who he was. I was like a follower. I had my own, health revelations, right? So I was a follower of Mark. He had his blog at the time and that was like kind of it. And he had this event, Primal Con, where everyone would like come, run around barefoot, play ultimate frisbee, and like eat paleo food with Mark.
He was ahead of the curve,
He was way ahead of the curve.
Wow, fuck.
Mark has been on the show multiple times. Mark and his wife Carrie have been on the show. Primal Kitchen, Mark's Daily Apple. You guys should go listen to that. But I just want to make sure because
my ketchup that I eat, my avocado mayo that I have.
He's also a friend, and yeah.
Okay, so he was way ahead of that, and you attended one of the events.
No, we sponsored it at Kavita, and I didn't need to go. I could have just like sent the marketing director, but I wanted to meet him, so I went and I like met Mark and Carrie, and then at the end of the night, I was like, "Do you guys need to ride home to your hotel?" And they were like, "Yeah." So they like hopped in my Ford Escape. I like dropped him off at the hotel. I quit Kavita. I'm on a surf trip with my now husband, who is not young. This is a different guy. And we're like living in a juicy van for a week, surfing from San Francisco down to San Diego. And Mark calls out of nowhere. And he's like, hey, this like food company, do you think you could come meet with me? Like he didn't know anyone in the food and beverage industry. So I started like our first meeting, he was going to call the brand Primal Blueprint, which is the name of his book. And I was like, that's a terrible name. You should call it Primal Kitchen. And I'll never forget, I always give him shit about this. He was like, he's like, oh, this meeting was worthwhile. And I was like, yes, you asshole. This meeting was worthwhile before I changed the name of your brand. But this was like 2013. We didn't even launch for like a year and a half. So I started consulting for $50 an hour, with Mark on Primal Kitchen.
Wow.
Yeah.
Okay.
That's a good deal.
So
it's a good deal.
You got a good
I
deal.
was really cheap. I know.
Here's why I love stories like this. And we haven't even gotten through the story, but just to begin with, I love that you said I was applying for marketing director. I didn't know what the fuck I was doing. I had no experience, but like this shows you that tenacity and grit and putting yourself out there is a really successful combination because it's obviously worked for you and getting scrappy and just seeing what sticks on a wall. There's so many people that I talk to, and I'm sure you the same, where it's like, I can't do this because I don't have this degree. I can't be a marketing director because I've never done it before. And I kind of think that that's bullshit. Like, I think if you put the right mixture together, you actually can do it. You're almost making an excuse of why you can't.
Yeah, I would totally agree.
I wish more entrepreneurs would just be honest about how much of the beginning is bullshit, where you're just like figuring random things.
Listen, the beginning, the middle, and the end is all bullshit. Like we sold the company to Kraft, and like my boss there, who's like a 17-year Heinz executive, was like, Morgan, listen, like nobody has any idea what they're doing. And I was like, oh, I feel so much better.
Yeah, I mean, like I barely know what I'm doing.
I mean,
and I say that all the time. And like, but my point in saying that is like what I always find a shame is all these people think that they're going to one day know how to do it. But in my opinion, you only figure out how to do it by doing it.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Totally. And also like the story doesn't really ever make sense in like until you look back on it. Like for me, you know what I mean? Like an accounting degree, like, I don't know, like how does this thing all tie together? But I don't know. I just feel like nothing happens until you like meet someone. So in the end of the day, you got to just like put yourself out there and like meet more people.
I think about it all in terms of momentum, meaning like the momentum of like Mark meets you at a random trade show, then you give him a ride, and then he's thinking of you, and then he's got this idea, and then it's like, then his energy is feeding your energy, and then you're both, and it's like you're both kind of start like, I even think with a company, like one person can push something so far, but all of a sudden you have 70, 80, 100 people pushing the same thing, and that momentum is so strong that it almost like forces the thing to go somewhere.
Yeah.
Does that make sense?
Yeah, totally.
But you can't do that unless you get moving.
Talk to us about the early stages, the nitty gritty that no one sees, initial rejections. What happened in the beginning that maybe could have broken you guys, but didn't?
Yeah. So like Mark had hired a couple to help him like launch the business, and I was just the marketing consultant, and like they weren't really getting anywhere. So he let them go right before we launched, and we kind of took off. But he was like working on a product. He probably told you about it, this Carolina Gold barbecue sauce that he was obsessed with. And I remember getting the ingredient statement, and I was like, Mark, you can't launch this. Like this was back when if you just slapped paleo on anything, it was like fine. I'm like, this has like 29 grams of sugar in it. Like it's literally like the formulation was like 44% maple syrup or something. So I think the early days, like the early days, God, I didn't hire anyone for 10 months. So Mark had, for those listening that don't know, he had a supplement company, which we still sell supplements today, and a blog. And he was doing like, say maybe 10 million in sales and probably taking home like 2 million a year, but his base was kind of dwindling. So we had like support staff of people who like were able to ship packages or like handle customer service, but there was no one really like strategically focused on the brand. So I think for like people listening who want to launch a food company where a lot of people get in trouble, I would say like things we did right. We price the product right. Like if you don't have enough gross margin to start, like a lot of people are like, oh, I'm going to price it here. My margin sucks. It's like 30%. But when I get scale, the ingredient costs are going to come down and it'll be fine. And it's like never fine. Like our price on our products, like one unit at 10 million in revenue and like 150 million in revenue is really not that different. Like minimum wage increases, inflation happens, like stuff happens, and it just
you gotta like set it right from the beginning.
You gotta set it right from the beginning.
Yeah.
So people mess up there a lot. But I think for us, let's see, what were some of the like, God, we couldn't make mayonnaise like a year in. We couldn't get a broker. Like our broker now is a broker who rejected me in like February, and then Whole Foods called and they was like, can you pick this brand up? Like we want to bring them in.
A broker to broker your product into stores.
Yeah, like you need a sales team to manage a broker, and then you need a broker who's gonna like handle like, they have like boots on the ground to go into like every natural food store, and they manage like Whole Foods merchandising and all that kind of stuff. Like they rejected me. So it was a lot of just like figuring out like who's the right broker to work with, who's the right first hire, you know, all those kinds of things. But we had this like one bad, we got a bunch of distribution like the first 10 months. So we were in retail, if you like get distribution and then you can't ship your product because you have issues or you're out of inventory, the store doesn't want to sit with empty spots on the shelf. So they'll just kick you out. And it costs money to get your product on shelf. Like people don't realize, but you pay like one case per store per week at Whole Foods, for instance. So like if Whole Foods takes you in 350 stores, you're giving a case to all 350 stores for free just to get on shelf. It takes a little while to pay that back. Margins are low. If you get kicked out 10 months later, like that's a big loss, right? So we couldn't make mayonnaise. Like suddenly 10 months into the business, we just like, the manufacturer was like, we ran the product and it like didn't emulsify. We had to pour it down the drain. And we're like, what? And then you can't it's not like they can just try again the next day. Like the next day they're running Hellman's mayonnaise. And the day after that, they're running Trader Joe's private label mayonnaise. So you have to wait like a week to get back on the schedule. We had like no inventory. So we were like pretty much freaking out. And then they ran on the weekend for us. So we had to pay overtime. Finally started making mayonnaise again. I got engaged the same weekend that they started making mayonnaise again. I go to Malibu the next day. We were running the business out of the Malibu Chamber of Commerce, this like tiny office. And I didn't want to tell Mark. It was like such a big deal for us. I didn't want to tell him on the phone. So I like wait. He like busts in the office and I was like, we're making mayonnaise and I'm engaged. And we both just start like sobbing in the office. And it was kind of just this like, I don't know. That was like a big tough thing for us.
When you guys were going through that stressful period of time, what were things that you did both professionally and personally kind of manage that? Because I think a lot of people, it's inevitable. You're going to hit this in any, even if you're not running a big business, just like in any endeavor. And I just wonder, looking back, how you guys manage that, and do you think you managed it well?
I think how we managed a lot of stuff is we like sent a lot of free protein powder and a lot of stuff to people who maybe other people like overlook. Like there isn't an admin I meet that I don't send a free package of Primal Kitchen stuff to. Like anyone I'm working with, or like I feel like there's a male ego thing. Like Mark would always be like, we got to talk to like the guy in charge at our co-man QMB. And I'm like, Mark, that guy's like golfing. He has no idea what's going on with our account. Like truly, we met him and I was like, this is
It's like when someone, this is like my pet peeve.
Yeah.
I've never talked about it on the show. When someone's pitching an investor and the investor's like out to dinner with his wife and like say you're like pitching the guy and the person who's pitching doesn't look at the wife.
Yeah.
I'm like,
well, and you're so dumb. Like, don't you know the wife's going to try the product? She's making the decision.
And she's also going back saying, I didn't like that guy. Pass the ketchup. Like
totally.
If you're talking to anyone, you should be talking to the assistant and the admin and the producer and all of the people because you're right. The guy's golfing or the guy's being manipulated by the wife.
Who's actually doing the work? Like this guy is not doing the work. Just like honestly, like I got to a point at Primal Kitchen where I'm like, look, I'm not doing the work. Like Anna
You have a team.
Call my marketing director.
Yeah.
Like you're talking to the wrong person.
Yeah.
So I feel like we always like Jim Clazo was our account exec and I would send protein powder to his son at college. Like our UNFI rep, I sent product to him. He would trade with his hairdresser for haircuts for Primal Kitchen protein powder. And we had like a great relationship with UNFI, like almost a sweetheart deal. Our broker was like, I literally have never met anyone who, and it's not that hard. It's like just good karma, good energy. Like don't be an asshole.
When Whole Foods calls you and wants to do a huge deal with you, how far is that in to the business? And were you guys freaking out? And is it an epiphany aha moment or is it not like that?
It was definitely a big moment. Back then, you sold in regionally. So we got into like the Rocky Mountain region. So it wasn't like a big deal, but it was like, okay, you got 60 stores in the Rocky Mountain region, right? Like it was a big deal, but it wasn't like a big deal in the sense of like the numerical value on the deal. But yeah, every win at that, anyone who says yes to at that phase is just like a big deal. You know, I remember like Mark had to go meet with Publix on the same day I had to meet with Costco and you're like running so fast. I feel like at a certain point, you like don't even have enough time to celebrate all the wins that are happening.
What are the things that you look back on, like the points where you guys really peaked? Like, is it when you launched ketchup? Is there a certain retailer you got in? What are the things where you can remember just feeling the success?
I mean, selling to Kraft felt like that was a big moment.
Way before that.
Way before that, definitely Whole Foods. Publix is like it's a chain in Florida. It's a really hard account to get into. And like the rumor is you don't get into Publix until you're like in your third or fourth year of business. And we got in like 11 months in. And that felt like a really big win. That was
meaning
huge
like they
for
just
us.
vet the companies and make sure they're going to be legitimate.
And there's like only one broker they like to talk to. So if you don't have like the right broker, you like can't even get a meeting with them. They're just like notoriously like kind of hard to get into.
Did you guys the whole time know you wanted to sell or did you kind of just say we're going to see what happens?
No, Mark and I knew we wanted to sell. Like he was, and I think that's really important. Like I give advice to a lot of like people are always calling me and I'm like, well, what do you want to be when you grow up? Like, and if people can't answer, I'm like, look, you don't need to lie to me. Like if you want to sell your company, it's fine. Like, you know, it's totally fine. Like, I'm cool with it. But I think a lot of people don't know. And I think it's really important to know because you need to make your decisions strategically, like backwards from that. Like, if you told me you want like a lifestyle business and you just want to pull like, you want to run your whole like personal expenses through a business and you want to pull $1 million off a year for salary, that's like a totally different strategy and decision-making platform than if you want to like grow something to sell it.
So explain the differences. So say there's someone listening that wants to sell their business and say there's someone listening that doesn't want to sell their business and pull money. What are the differences?
So I'll give you like a perfect example. A friend of mine who you guys know, you've probably an influencer friend of mine. She's amazing. I'm sure you've had her on the podcast, but she has a powder business, like protein powder, all of this, right? And she has a great life. She's like doing the influencer thing. She's home. She spends time with her kids. She has this great business. And she's like, should I, take this to retail? And I'm like, well, what do you want to do? Do you want to like be a CEO? The only reason in my mind you would go to retail with a food or beverage product is if you want to exit the business one day, because you're not going to
you're going to make money.
You're not going to make a lot of money. The chances you're like making enough money to
and you
justify,
have to build a big infrastructure.
is like hardly, it's just not worth it. Like, honestly, I don't think it's worth it. So I always said to her, like, well, what do you want your life to look like? Do you want to be like a CEO? Do you want to hire a team? Do you want to be in an office? Do you want to or do you just want to keep doing this lifestyle, but maybe like make more money? And she decided like, yeah, forget it. I like don't want to go to retail. There's just a lot more involved in that. And I think some people who are in retail, if you want to sell your company, in the end of the day, you're really like need to figure out what the strategic or the private equity buyer wants, right? So like in the food and beverage space, it's like they want growth that their like brands can't achieve on their own, right? So there's only like, you don't really want to buy like a healthy Hellmann's mayonnaise, right? Like it just wouldn't feel right. Like my father-in-law in Michigan's like not buying, he doesn't want Heinz to make like an organic, unsweetened ketchup. It just doesn't like fit the brand. So in order to grow, they need to like tap new brands and new audiences. But like if you back it up even further from that, when we sold the company, we had never done $1 through the register at Costco, Walmart, or Target. So when we're going to pitch selling the company, there's like so much white space. You're really selling white space. Like
you're saying this has not been done and look at what you can do and how much growth it can have.
We did $50 million in the natural channel and Whole Foods is our biggest customer. And like Kraft Heinz is never even called on Whole Foods, right?
So what you're really selling is the white space.
Is the opportunity for growth.
That's interesting.
So you don't want to realize it all yourself.
So you don't want to
go out, tee it up.
Because think about it, if you've realized it all yourself, then there's nothing.
What's there left for them to do?
Yeah.
You got to leave something for them to do. You either got to leave it in distribution or you got to leave it in innovation.
Huh.
Meaning
I never thought of it like that. That's really smart what you just said. I never looked through a lens like that.
Yeah.
So
well, think about it. If you're buying, it's like buying a house at the top of the market that's already fixed up as opposed to buying something that's a gem and a teardown that you know if it gets fixed up is going to get millions of dollars and more value. Right? You wouldn't buy the thing that's already done and actualized all the value because then you can only go down.
How long did it take from you guys starting the company to sell? What was the roadmap?
3.5 years. It was like really fast.
That's really fast.
Yeah, it was fast.
And did you guys the whole time know that you would want to sell in 3.5 years? You knew?
Okay, like when I was at Kavita, because Kavita also sold to PepsiCo. So I was there when they were sub 10 million in revenue and structuring. They had like a structured buyout with Pepsi. So they were kind of like negotiating that when I was there. And at that time, which was like 12 years ago, people used to say like, you just need to get to like 30 million and you can exit. And then it was like, you need to get to 50 and then you can exit. And now it's like, I don't even see like $100 million businesses exiting. Like it definitely like the bar is leveled up. So I think Mark and I knew like around where we wanted to be. It just felt like a good time. And we were worried. This was like the end of 2018. This is funny because like little did we know what we were in for. We were like, we don't know the election, like this could get crazy. And then like COVID happens, like, you know, after we sold the company,
yeah,
right?
But I imagine that was good for that particular business because more people were at home cooking, yeah?
Yeah, but like a lot of big brands got prioritized, to be honest, like in the Targets of the world, like they couldn't deal with the broken supply chain from like smaller distributors. So any brands that were selling, you can sell through a distributor, or you can go direct to like some of the bigger chains warehouses. Like some of the bigger brands were selling direct to the bigger chain warehouses and they like, it was helpful, but it wasn't like, there were some challenges.
What does the whole process look like from beginning to start? Is Kraft courting you from beginning to end? Is Kraft courting you? Did you poach Kraft? Did someone set a meeting? Once the meeting starts, how long does it take to sell? I'm so curious to hear from someone who's done this, the start to the end of was it 8 months? Was it 8 days? What does it look like?
Yeah, so I didn't know this, but there's like a whole process you go through and it's literally called like a process. And so we did a thing called a bake-off where you like meet with a bunch of investment bankers and they present you like, we think we could sell you for X and you pick who you want to hire to sell your company. So we did this bake-off at Soho House in Malibu. It was like me, Mark, and Rick. And we had all these meetings. We invited all these bankers out, not one woman, by the way, which, you know, I love men. I'm like, one time I said I was like an anti-feminist and I got all this flack at like a speaking event, but I've loved working. I don't have any like, I'm not going to choose someone just because they're a woman. I'm going to choose them because they're the best. But we did interview a bunch of like asshole men, bankers who just literally didn't even look at me, to your point earlier about the husband-wife thing. I'm like, do you know who's making decisions here? Like, whatever. So we did this bake-off.
What are their names?
Yeah, right? A bunch of guys, a bunch of banker guys
What's
came.
their firm called?
They presented to us, like, here's what we'll do. And like half these people, they're like, this would be our strategy. We would like take you to the 301c group at General Mills. And I'm like, I partied with the guys that run the 301c group at Expo West. Like, they haven't bought a brand. Like, you have no idea what you're talking about. Like, you don't know how to sell a company in the food space. You know, it was a lot of like, but these are big banks, right? Like big bankers, big bank names behind them. So we ended up hiring no one. I was just like, Mark, this is like not going to work for me. Like all of these guys are a no. And then through Thrive Market, we got introduced to this amazing woman, Romitha, and she had sold Buy to Dr. Pepper Sample Group. She had sold Dollar Shave Club. She had sold Blue Buffalo to General Mills. She sold Vital Proteins. And we met her.
She sounds like she can get it done.
Yeah, we met her and I was
she
like,
can come on the podcast.
I'm sold. Yeah, you should bring her on.
Yeah,
She's
she
great.
sounds great.
Yeah, so Romitha, she's like one of my dear friends today. But we hired her in like April maybe, and we started the process. So it's like very scripted. Like you open a data room, you send out like a SIM, which is basically like like a long deck with kind of like general information about your business to all these different potential acquirers. For us, it was either private equity or strategics. Strategics means like the Kellogg's, Kraft Heinz, PepsiCo, Cokes of the world, those big publicly traded strategic companies. And then they submit, like there's a date and they submit like an IOI. It was like so crazy. I was like, wait, so you mean on this day, we're going to get like a letter with people's like range of what they'd pay for us if they're interested, and then you pick who advances to the next round. And at this point, it's very
like a dating
procedural.
show.
It's very like, it's called a process. It's literally called like a process, right? Our process took 6 months. I was 32 weeks pregnant, doing management presentations, like huge. All like, the people who make it to the final round fly out. You have like 6-hour meetings. They grill you. You're like presenting. You're kind of doing like the dog and pony show. And then like final bids are due and you pick a final bid and then you sign a deal.
So how long when you sign the deal?
Lauren, by the way, it sounds simple, but it's a
no, it doesn't
grueling
sound
process.
simple. This doesn't sound
grueling to me. But yes,
they're grilling the shit out of you.
It wasn't that bad. It was just more like nerves on my part, I think. They weren't like, there is some grilling for sure, but you're like so prepared. Like if you hire the right like banker.
And if you love your product, for me.
At a certain point, I remember being like, these bankers know my business
if you know your product
do.
inside and out too, and you've like created it from the ground up,
but
you
there
feel
is it's a different language a bit. There is like that, where you're like, I don't know like exactly what you're talking about, I don't know.
So,
yeah.
So when you pick the company, is it that quick? Is it just like you sell to them?
Yeah,
and
it kind of is.
And are you guys off Primal Kitchen? Like, how do you set that up?
So Mark and I, we had talked for like 2 years. Mark and I owned 95% of the company when we sold. Most people raise money. Like this is super rare, but we ran the company on a $9 million line of credit at one point in time that Mark had a personal guarantee on. We were super scrappy. We had $2 million of EBITDA on $50 million in revenue the year we sold. And they thought that was like phenomenal. So I always ask people who want to get into the food industry, I'm like, well, when Primal Kitchen was doing $50 million in revenue, like how much EBITDA do you think we had? And they're always like, I don't know, like 10, 20 million. And I'm like, try 2.
It
and
is
like,
pretty wild though.
It's pretty wild. Yeah.
And if someone doesn't know what EBITDA is, you guys, can you explain that?
It's like bottom line profit on your business.
Okay.
Yeah, let's not get into. So I was talking to a banker the other day. He's like, "Oh, maybe I can come on the Skinny Confidential and talk about EBITDA." He was like, "I want to find a girl." I'm like, "That's a good way to come and never get married and never find anyone."
So
like,
boring.
The last thing we need to do is start going into EBITDA here. But funny, we ended up going, Lauren and I, in probably around 2000. Did you tell us 16 or 17 is when you sold?
We sold in 18.
Okay,
we closed January.
Do you remember that party? It was at Peter Thiel's house.
Yeah, I met you guys there.
That's where we met you.
I was with Kelly Levesque.
Yes.
Yeah.
That's where we met you. I forgot.
The reason I bring it up bitterly, John Durant, is because I'm just kidding, but we just started doing things with Wild Ventures like at that party after that. And he's like, hey, come to this party. We're going to celebrate this huge win. And that's when we met Mark.
Yeah.
And I was like, oh, great.
And you're like, thanks. We didn't invest in. We
exactly.
did. The 5% we sold was like friends and family, but influencers and such through John Durant that you mentioned. Yes.
Hi, John Durant.
When you make the decision to sell to Kraft, and Kraft is known for all different kinds of things.
Right.
How do you make sure that your product has the integrity that it does? Because you guys are very specific about ingredients. You don't mess around.
Yeah. I mean, look, like, I think everybody is always like, oh, you sold to the man. You're like, it's evil, the evil empire. Like, they're going to mess up your product. But the reality is...
Wait, hold on. Everyone that says that, let's get real.
True.
You're going to tell me that if Kraft offered you $200 million, you wouldn't sell?
No, that's true.
No, thanks, Kraft.
But the other reality
I'm going to make my maple syrup in my garage forever.
Come on, everyone. I can't when people do that.
I know.
It's
I'm with you. But the other reality is like, do you think Kraft is like stupid enough where they're going to buy us and then be like, okay, now let's introduce canola oil and see how this goes. Like they're like we had like a 4-hour meeting and they were like, we spent 2 hours on like, can you guys just like very clearly define what your ingredient standards are. Like, it was like the first thing they wanted to understand about us. And then truth be told, like, we're 5 years post-acquisition. I like just stepped out of my like president and CEO role in the spring, and my whole team is still there. Like, my entire team, which is also like literally unheard of.
How big is your team when you sold?
Oh God, we probably had 50 people maybe.
50,
but I mean, like my senior executive team, like all the, like most people, 95% of the people who were working for us when we sold are still there.
So Kraft has maintained the integrity of
Definitely.
the product and
Yeah.
also has the same team.
Yeah. And really, they just like took off my plate the stuff that sucks about running a business. So like legal issues like BS, Prop 65, whatever. There's all just sorts of BS. You guys probably know, like, you know, I don't know. I'm not even going to go there, but there's a lot of BS lawsuit stuff that comes up that it's just nice to be able to pass along to someone else, not having to manage the bank relationship for financing the growth of the business. HR stuff can get super complicated, especially through COVID. Like, we were so thankful to have like a real HR organization to help guide that process for us. And then like quality, their quality team is the like best in the country, right? Like they really were only like value add for us.
For me, this is like a weird question.
Yeah.
If I sold a company tomorrow for $200 million, say I sold the Skinny Confidential.
Yeah.
There would be a little bit of almost a depression. And let me tell you why.
Yeah.
It's almost like a wedding where you get married and you have like the best quote unquote day of your life. And then the Sunday hits and you're like almost having Sunday scaries because you've peaked at this moment.
Yeah.
When you sell for this much and you've like checked the boxes that everyone wants to check and you've done it. Is there like kind of like a melancholiness afterwards or no?
I like severely burnt out after. So
Yeah.
like I was 32 weeks pregnant. I had my
I can
first
imagine.
baby November 6th and we signed the deal with Kraft November 28th. So I was like home. I had 5 days of maternity leave that consisted of my hospital stay for my C-section. I came home and I came home on a Friday. Saturday, Mark and I spent 4 hours on the phone. We bonused every single person who worked for us. And like, they were pretty substantial, like life-changing amounts of money. And we called everyone. The deal broke to the Chicago Tribune like a day or two before we were planning on announcing.
Why Chicago? Was that something where like Kraft?
Kraft is headquartered in Chicago. So someone broke the sale, which was weird. Like, we're like, oh God. So we had to like hop on the phone in the morning and call everyone and say like, hey, we sold the company. We have a retention plan in place for you. And we have a really big check for you that will be transferred as like a bonus. Thank you for everything you did to get us here. And, you know, we sit on. So it was like a sob fest. Like Mark and I were like calling everyone. We had like, you know, people was like life-changing amount of money for people, right? Like people were like, oh my God, I just like paid off my college loans. I had like no idea you guys were going to sell the company. Like it was Mark and I, Mark would definitely tell you like it was besides the day we were making mayonnaise, like probably more than that, like our favorite day of running. I felt like Oprah.
So when you wake up on the like whenever you go back postpartum and it's a Monday and you've done
I was
thing.
just so burnt out because I never took maternity leave. I remember that spring, like people calling me, and I remember like people calling me for work to ask like real questions, and I was like, why are they calling me? Like, I can't do this anymore. I like really burnt out. But then we started working on new innovation and I got like invigorated again. I think my melancholy moment, I stayed on, you know, like my role really didn't change that much. And we had an earnout on the deal that was like 2 years down the line and we hit our earnout. So I was pretty motivated to keep going for 2 more years. And also like we sold the company for $200 million. Mark and I owned 95%. Mark owned the lion's share of the 95%. So I think Mark's melancholy definitely hit like harder than mine for sure.
Yeah, but we talked to him and he's, you know, like I said, he's a friend and people, you know, it sounds like you did this so quickly, but people forget Mark had been in the health and wellness space for decades. And so I think what felt fast for maybe a lot of people with that particularly, for him, it probably felt like such a long run.
Yeah. Mark definitely had the melancholy though. If he told you he didn't, he's full of shit. Because I remember Mark's
because it's like it's almost like you go to the moon.
Well, you know what is really hard for me right now, to be honest? So like I hired all my friends. So the girl that moved to South America with me was our first hire, Anna. She's our VP of marketing still today. The woman who hired me at Kavita, Amanda, she's our EVP of growth. She still works for Primal Kitchen today. My friend Kelly, who I played soccer with in high school, she runs West Coast sales for us. My best friend Natalia manages the Target account. Rick, my mentor, who I consulted with in between, he came on and was our COO. So I have recently like transitioned out of my day-to-day role there. And I'm like, during the day, I feel like I'm like a needy person these days. I'm like calling people and I'm like, oh my God, like I don't have anybody to talk to during the day right now.
This
My whole social life is there.
About is that people don't realize that when they think like, oh, you've made it, you've done the thing, you made the money, and it's like you hear this and I think this is really real.
It's real.
I mean, listen, this is like nobody's gonna feel bad for anyone that has a successful exit. No one's like, well, it was me, but we know a lot of people that have successfully exited businesses. And what happens is like there's this period after about a year or two where they're looking around and being like, well, what am I doing all day?
What do I do now? What do I do now?
I can imagine it'd be awkward
because you have all this money and you think because you have all this money, you're going to do all this stuff, but you do that for a while and you're like, okay. And then you realize like your friends and everybody still have to go to work.
Yeah.
And like, I have, there's somebody I'm thinking of in particular, and he just took another job as CEO, and like the salary doesn't matter at all.
He just wants this like social.
He like has his own jet, and he's like, I need to like, he was like the first time he flew commercial to go to the like whatever it was going for the company.
Yeah.
But he's just like, he's doing it because he's bored in his life. It's like he needs a purpose to do something.
Yeah.
How do you think about what to do next? Because I see a lot of people who sell their company, they'll try to do like 100 things next, or they'll be quiet for a while. Like what's the strategy of what to do next?
You open a discotheque.
Yeah, I once owned the domain name surfyogaecuador.com, and I just wanted to like have a surf yoga retreat in Ecuador in my 20s. But no, I think for me, I have been like sitting for like years wondering like what is next, like, and kind of like searching. Like I was talking to Giselle, Ryan Seacrest, they all wanted like a CEO. We want to launch a company. Will you be the CEO? And ultimately, I just like don't feel like I need to be anybody's like yes woman at this point in my life. I really want to do like something for me. And I think though, yeah. So I moved into a consulting role with Primal. I think consulting is a great way to just kind of like slowly step back. So it's more like advisory. I'm still very involved, but more like almost like a board member would be, right? And then I picked up this new cool gig with a big private equity fund called Summit. They have an $8 billion fund, and they have an investment thesis in health, wellness, and VMS. And I'm doing this executive in residence program with them. So kind of like looking at deal flow, which I like love. So introducing them to founders in food and beverage space, and, you know, sitting in on management presentations and kind of helping with the investment thesis there. But I really couldn't leave. Like I stayed, like I said, for 5 years. I also had 3 kids. So I kept, every time I think about leaving, I just like, there would be another like corporate maternity leave looming in my future, and I just couldn't get out. But I did finally like have kind of my aha, like hell yes, for what I want to work on next. And I'm just really excited to put into the world. And I think that was kind of like my impetus to finally like make a move.
Can you talk about this aha moment?
Yeah. So I am entering into the category that's the hardest category in the grocery store I said I would never go into, which is beverage.
Okay.
But I think you'll appreciate this, like very bullish on just like macro trends. Like we leaned in at Primal on like no seed oils, unsweetened. People don't want canola oil. It doesn't, like, we don't think that trend is going to go away. I don't think people are going to like want to seek out more sugar in their condiments moving forward. And I'm very bullish on just like protein right now. I feel like protein's kind of like where it's at. And I became aware of this ingredient, like there's a clear whey protein isolate. So I'm going to put protein into like a 2 gram of sugar soda, if you will. So it's like a protein water, but sparkling.
Sounds good.
Yeah. So there's some protein water on the market, but none that's sparkling. And I'm super excited. So I'm like in R&D and doing package design and like kind of rolling out the business plan on that. So,
I would drink protein soda.
Oh, so
yeah.
When you think about,
right? Yeah. Like you could replace your sparkling water.
What is a hit? Like you've seen it. Like what is a hit? What are the ingredients for a hit?
A hit business?
Yeah.
Yeah. I think like, oh God, I have so many thoughts on this.
Go off.
I see a lot of businesses that get too like diversified categorically. So like if you see the biggest exits, like RX Bar, right? They got to like 100 million. They were super profitable and they were very focused in one category. So it was just easy to be acquired. The worst thing that could have happened to me at Primal Kitchen is our bar business could have taken off, because say I have a business that's 50 million in revenue, it's 25 million condiments and 25 million bars. Like Kraft Heinz doesn't want to buy me. They don't value the bar. So they're not going to value the bar side of the business in the exit. And Kellogg doesn't want to buy me because they don't sell condiments. They don't know what to do with you. So I think a lot of entrepreneurs get really swept up in like the innovation of it all. And they go real wide on categories. We went wide, but we were at least like 75% condiments.
Yep.
I think that makes it harder to sell. So I'm passionate about that. I think you used to be able, like 10 years ago, like Kavita was never profitable. They were like, we'll never be profitable. We'll sell and we won't be profitable. But PepsiCo has this large distribution network. We put our trucks on there. Instantly, the brand becomes profitable once they sell to PepsiCo. Those days are like so over. Like unit economics, profitability, like running a responsible company is like sexier than ever. Like go figure. So I think it was a little bit of the wild west in the CPG industry like 5 years ago. So I don't know. I think like focus. I just saw this amazing company that had like 225 million in revenue, 20% EBITDA margins, and like they had a failed process. And I think it's because like the founders seemed difficult and the strategics didn't want to like take a risk to have difficult people, you know, dealing with difficult people in the corporate environment. So I think there's a lot of things you need, but I'm really big on just like this, you're selling the white space opportunity. And like sometimes the idea is better on PowerPoint presentation than it is in real life. Like if you want to launch that subcategory and you're not in there, put it in your deck, in your presentation, and like sell the opportunity. Because like the buyer at Kraft looks at they get your Walmart data. The analyst is like, okay, their Walmart business is $10 million, right? But if you've never sold a dollar through Walmart, POV, there's no data to analyze. In their mind, they're like, this is at least $100 million Walmart business right here, but it's really not. So
you're looking at what else you can do and how much further you can go,
yeah,
right?
and sometimes when you've done nothing, like the idea of it is bigger than if you have some actual data to like do some mathematics
So
on.
are you telling me this whole time I could be doing nothing?
Yeah.
What's the special sauce? Speaking of special sauce, just a tangent. I use your Primal Kitchen special sauce on my bowl of
it's good.
meat.
Yeah.
The
dipping sauces are crushing it.
The-
It's like
They're really good.
amazing.
The special
It's amazing.
sauce
The one with the
tastes,
blue. I like the blue
I don't know
one.
if you guys meant to do this. It tastes like
Yeah,
In and Out,
that's special
but
sauce.
it's healthy.
The special
We
sauce.
have a chicken dipping sauce that's in the orange bottle, and we thought the healthy Chick-fil-A sauce would do the best. It's not this yum yum sauce, which I didn't even want to launch. I was like, that is
I
a
haven't tried
tiny
the yum yum
category.
sauce.
Like it's got a black label. It's crushing
I
it.
haven't
It's
tried
like
the yum yum
selling up there with like our ranch dressing. Like it's the most successful innovation we've ever
Wait, but
launched.
I like
it's
the
crazy.
special sauce.
Yeah, the special sauce is one of the dipping sauces. That's
okay,
one
but
of the 4.
that on a bowl of meat.
Yeah, that is
with
good.
chopped lettuce, chopped tomato,
Yeah.
chopped
I
jalapeno,
love
chopped red onion, maybe white too, and a little bit of Primal Kitchen ketchup, and it tastes like a fucking In-N-Out burger.
Yeah. Yeah, it's
really
good.
good.
That
Okay,
was the idea.
So what's in the special sauce for a founder? What do you look at and you're like, that founder knows what they're doing?
I mean, I don't think any founders like we talked about really know. Like nobody knows.
Okay,
what they're
but
doing.
like what's the recipe that you see that works?
God, this is so hard. Like they're all so different.
Okay, that's fair.
I mean, I think like the team you surround yourself with and like the strategy and your willingness to be able to like bend. Like sometimes it's like my friends I don't know if you had any friends who went in with like childbirth with like a really strict plan.
Oof.
And they had like the worst labor and deliveries.
Yeah, you got to kind of go with
You
the
got to
flow.
kind of be able to like.
I was so fat, I just didn't even care. I was just like,
I was
roll
like, I'm
me
giving
in
the
hospital.
epidural. Yeah.
I was like a literal sow.
Yeah.
I was like,
yeah.
whatever happens,
Right.
happens.
And you were probably like much easier to deal
Michael,
with.
put the 528 hertz on. Do what I said.
She's actually pretty easy.
I
She's
had a
easy.
list for him, but like, you just got to go with the flow.
No, so I think sometimes people can be like too
Rigid.
stuck in their ways, and then it's like they can't even hear the advice that's being given a bit.
What do you think has been the best advice that you've gotten from all the successful people that you have met? What's something that really resonated for you?
One of my mentors is this guy, Dave Barham, who founded VMG, which is like arguably the most successful like consumer private equity fund. And I like grabbed him out of a trade show in 2016, like out of the aisle. I was like, oh, VMG. And he's like, what the hell? And we became friends. And he's still a mentor of mine today. And he was very like, I met up with him frequently for advice on growing and selling Primal Kitchen. And he was very like, you need to have your like end goal in mind here. Like you really need to know what you want to do and then like work every decision back from there. And I think that philosophy like really infiltrated. Also just like the scrappiness like cannot be underestimated. Like I meet people who are like running a $10 million business, a $10 million revenue business, and they have like a PR firm that costs $200,000 a year. And I'm like,
It's
what are
insane.
you doing?
Yeah.
Or you meet people who spent like, I met a guy who's like, yeah, I had this $30 million sweetener business and he's spending $250,000 on a brand refresh. Like we did our package design in-house. Like I see people like they just don't know how they don't know, they're like suckers and they end up falling for these like, it's almost like criminal, almost kind of pisses me off, but just like total waste of money. Like you're going to make mistakes, but like.
Is PR worth it?
everybody hates their PR agency. Like, that's the truth. Like, I think PR
Our PR agency is going to hate us saying this, but yeah, I mean, I feel like you almost got to, I mean, this is just a PR in general. It's almost like you got to almost be firing them every month.
That's what I always say. And then you get a new Rolodex maybe like 6 months later.
Yep.
Yeah.
Well, it's hard to quantify now. It's just hard to quantify how valuable that kind of stuff. Like, okay, so we'll do this show, for example.
Yeah.
And this is gonna maybe give me some shit. We'll do this show, and then like you'll get all these press articles from all these quote unquote big outlets that people want to be in. And I'll go look at the analytics across all the shows. I'm like, that didn't drive any shit over here. Like, as a matter of fact.
But my COO Gillian told me that there's a way to measure it. Hold on. She said it's called, have you guys heard of this?
The way I measure it is I look at the analytics that are analytics.
The Barcelona Principles. Have you heard of this?
No.
It's the 7 guidelines that help measure the effectiveness of public relations. Everyone go Google it. Goal setting, measurement and evaluation, outcomes and impacts, exclusion of add value, social media, holistic approach, integrity, and transparency. And you can actually go and look at this. So I don't know if that helps.
My personal take is some of these publications need our content more than we need them to write about our content. Does that make sense?
Totally.
Maybe that's arrogant to say.
No, I mean, we've had similar experiences. Like, we did big, heavy hitting influencers, and then we tiny influencers, and we could see like these tiny influencers just posting a ton about us, and there's like a lot of authenticity there, and it drives like more revenue and followers. I'm like the worst CEO type in the world, though. Like, people be like, what's your target demographic? I'm like, I don't really believe in that. Like, I think it's so much of this is just like bullshit marketing, made up crap for someone to like present in a meeting. Like, Mark and I had no business plan. I have no MBA. It was a lot of just like, what's the total risk here? Like, we spent $36,000 on our first run of mayonnaise. We were hoping we'd sell it out in a year, and it sold out in a week. And we were like, okay, we're onto something. We priced the product at $9.99 because in order for us to keep 50% gross margin, people were either going to buy it at $9.99 and we had a business, or they weren't and we didn't have a business.
I think you guys were not selling food to me. You're selling cleaner living. You're selling a cleaner kitchen. Like, for me, I think I'm selling daily habits. I don't think I'm selling beauty tools. I'm selling daily habits. And I think as a brand, instead of your target demographic, you need to really understand what you're selling. Yeah. Because Primal Kitchen to me it's selling me a better version of ketchup, a better version of mayo. And it's almost selling me peace of mind. Yeah. Do you know like that Super Mario Brothers, the game? Like, you know how he runs and he jumps on the plant and he gets fire? I do know that one, Michael. And this is the only like marketing thing I love. It would be like, don't sell the plant, sell the ability to throw fireballs, right? Like, you don't want to go being like, this is my plant. Look at how beautiful, it's red, it's beautiful. No, you want to be selling like, listen, when you jump on this plant, like, you can throw fireballs. So I feel like that is like a good marketing thing that's kind of stuck with me.
It's like you sell the thing that will happen if you do the thing.
Yeah, you sell the end result. Like, you don't sell the attributes.
How do you balance being so successful and having 3 boys? You told me off air a little bit. It's really difficult to be running a business the way you and I want to be running a business and also show up and be a present mother. And I think that needs to be talked about more.
I don't see what's so hard for you women.
I don't.
Dad
like,
shows
no
up. It's
one
like,
anyone who's like, I got this balance is lying.
I
like,
leave
in my
and it's
opinion.
like, Mom, why are you leaving?
Yeah. Well, my husband actually, like, he played football for the Air Force Academy, had like a whole career, and then he stays home. So we like sold the company, and then he's a stay-at-home dad. And that's
you stay home, Michael.
Yeah, that's really helpful.
Do I have that as an option?
Yeah.
No, I'm just kidding. I would go crazy at home. I couldn't stay at home.
No, he's great. Like, he's really much more patient with the kids and like much better mom than me. But I was telling you, like, I feel like being a working mom, you're just like with the kids for too much time, and then I'm overwhelmed. And then the other side of the pendulum, I just swing to being not with them, and then I'm just ridden with guilt. And there's like I'm really trying to find the happy medium, but it's like, it's hard. My kids are 2, 4, and 5. I have all boys. There's like no limit to the amount of
energy. If it makes you feel better, though,
energy.
My mom worked my whole life, and I remember she would come home late, and I remember waiting up for her, but later in life, I really appreciate it. And I think like the types of women, both in platonic and intimate relationships, like I'm always attracted to like that kind of profile. So I think it's going to be good.
Yeah, let's hope. Yeah,
I think it's good.
That makes me feel better.
She'll call you in 30 years.
Like, I guess what I'm saying is like, I think I understand the guilt, but
no,
I think,
you don't understand.
No,
you actually don't understand.
I understand that you feel the guilt is what I'm saying.
It's horrible.
But
I feel guilty when I go upstairs for too long.
As a byproduct as a son who had a mom that did the same thing and still does. I appreciate it later.
Yeah, and it changes kind of like what you're looking for.
Before
My
you
therapies,
go-
I only go to therapy like 4 or 5 hours a day.
I only go
actually.
like once a month.
His
now.
therapy is right when I wake up in the morning. He wants to talk about all his woos. You guys can use code skinny at primalkitchen.com/skinny. You get 20% off your online order. I 100% recommend getting the special sauce, the ketchup, the mayo. Michael likes the chocolate collagen. He uses it in his smoothie every single day. What is your favorite product, Morgan?
The buffalo sauce,
Yeah,
the
that's damn
vanilla
good.
collagen.
You really can't go wrong with your
You can't go
products.
wrong.
I'm a big believer in your products. I've been a fan of the
Thank you.
brand for
I just like to look
forever.
at Mark's face every morning.
I know that makes it extra special.
Yeah,
with
if
his
only he had
little-
his shirt off,
Yeah.
it would be a lot
Well,
better.
I see that on Twitter. So
I
I'm-
know we see that a lot. Yeah.
Can we do a giveaway to one audience member of
Totally.
all our favorites, like
Yeah,
a Michael,
absolutely.
Lauren, Morgan
Yeah.
situation? Okay, you guys, go follow at Primal Kitchen on Instagram and tell us your favorite part of this episode with Morgan on my latest post. If someone wants to come work for your new sparkling protein soda company and they want to be brazen and slide
Yeah.
into
When
your
you get
DMs,
that up and going, come back. We'll talk about
yeah,
it.
Yeah, no, I
what's,
totally will.
What's your Instagram if they want to say hi?
Well, it's like Drinkway. So WAAY is going to be the brand name. So drinkway.com, and that's Drinkway on Instagram.
What's your Instagram?
Morgan Zanotti.
What's
But
the
I'm, like,
first
very
thing you bought
Over social.
when Kraft deposited those funds
Oh,
in your
a
house? That was
house?
like a big
Literally a
No,
house.
give me
No,
something.
no, this is truly, we signed the deal on November 28th. We didn't close till January 3rd. We went into escrow on a house and had to remove contingencies prior to January 3rd. So the money hadn't been transferred yet. We go into escrow on this house and I was like, Adam, if this doesn't come through, we're going to lose the contingency deposit on this house and we like can't afford this. So yeah, we like really did buy a house.
What's like something random that you bought though?
I bought a Tesla.
Okay.
And this is a good story. I was going to Mommy and Me classes at the time, and I had this like Ford Escape that I'd had for like 11 years that I loved.
The Ford Escape that you drove, Mark and Carrie.
Yeah, and I missed this car because it had like keyless entry. It was great for surfing and stuff. I don't know why they don't do more keyless entry on the cars, but I digress. So I go to Mommy and Me, and then I'm like, I can't show up to Mommy and Me with the Tesla with the doors that open like this. Like I'm from the Midwest. This is so obnoxious. And then I drove the Tesla and I didn't get it. I'm telling Mark, I don't know. This feels like so indulgent. And then I went to one class of Mommy and Me and I was like, you know what? I kind of fucking hate Mommy and Me class. I think I'm just going to quit Mommy and Me and go buy the Tesla. So I quit Mommy and Me. I never went back. I bought the Tesla and that was like kind of my indulgent
Morgan,
purchase.
you're my kind of gal.
Yeah.
Thanks for coming on the show.
Yeah.
Thank you,
Thank you
Morgan.
guys. This was awesome.